being anxious in adolescence is completely normal because of all those changes, let alone high school with 5 different classes and loads of homework and all of those things, right? So we really have to recognize it's pretty normal. But when is the difference? You know, and that's the one, when do I really worry? And of course, it was one of the first chapters I wanted to write in this book is when is my moody, grumpy teenager, when is it something more than that?
Yes.
And
hi, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and this is Well, Hello Anxiety. In a world that often moves too fast, we're here to pause, breathe, and understand anxiety together. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share honest conversations, and uncover the science behind anxiety and well-being, all while creating a space where it's okay to not be okay. Let's continue this journey together. Parenting a teenager is hard. Not only are we living through a really busy time in our lives where we're juggling parenting, work, ageing parents, perhaps health challenges of our own, and for the women listening, sooner or later, perimenopause is coming for you. It's certainly come for me and found me. We're supporting our kids as they transition through a really extraordinary time of change, of risk-taking, decision-making, a yearning for autonomy, asking important questions, not always of us, and of course, so many wonderful new experiences. And we think being a parent is hard. Being a teenager is really hard too. And they are growing up in a world very different to the one that we grew up in, which my daughter reminded me of yesterday. And it can make it really challenging for us to know how to show up for them, how to guide them, and how to support them in the best possible ways. And because of all of this and so much more, I'm delighted to talk with the wonderful Maggie Dent today so we can better understand how we can help our teens. No introduction needed, but known as the Queen of Common Sense, I'm going to introduce her anyway because she is an absolutely extraordinary person, and the work that she's done to support us as parents here in Australia and her resources, her books, her podcasts, her support extends across the world. We're very, very lucky to have her company today. She is one of Australia's favourite parenting authors, educators and podcasters. She is the author of 9 major books, hosts the podcasts Parental as Anything and The Good Enough Dad. I love that title. And an ambassador for a number of incredible organisations. She joins us today from the south coast of New South Wales, where she lives with her good bloke and her fur baby, Mr. Hugo Walter Dent, who anyone that listens to the podcast knows how much I love the four-legged friends. So, Maggie Dent, thank you for joining me, and I'm just so delighted to have your company and your wisdom here with us today.
Oh, Jodi, it's actually my honour. And it's actually 10 books. This is the 10th. So the one you're holding that you've got there is the 10th. So I had written 9 to then.
9,
and
yes.
it is very last and final one in terms of for parents. So I love the fact that I'm able to have a chat to you and honour all your work as well, because we work and we have worked over a number of years with those who really struggle. And this particular journey from child to adult, we know it starts earlier than ever, and we know that particularly for boys it's finishing later, and that so much of the stuff that stresses us out as parents, when we understand the why, then we turn up in a different way when we support them with all of the bumps, and craziness that can happen.
I've always found that personally, no matter what it is, when you understand the why behind something, you just feel more empowered and you understand more about what's inside your control and what's outside of your control. One of the things that I think would be a great place to start is to understand what's happening in their brain. There's so many big emotions. There's so much change. So it's a time of transition. So what's going on for them?
Oh, look, it's the great remodeling. And, when I do explain this, there is a significant difference between the girls and the boys in this window. We know they go into puberty earlier. And they often are, cognitively more switched on. They're better often verbally. They're better at exploring feelings and all those things. But so what Mother Nature decided is that for you to change from a child to an adult, we need to prune off the bits you're not using. And then we've got to grow some new bits really quickly. And we've also got to get you in touch with your emotional world a little better. And so if we can keep in mind, Jodi, that any change that occurs to that child on the journey from our tweens, they don't actually know necessarily that it is going to happen or when it is going to happen, but their amygdala, which is the whole part of our threat center, it knows something's changed, so it often gets stressed. And one of the key ones that I noticed in my classrooms, because I taught co-ed for 15 years before I was a counsellor, was, oh my gosh, how forgetful the 13 and 14-year-old boys got in my classrooms. And I used to think, well, they just why? And of course it is because for girls, memory and organisation skills are way higher up. So in a boy, they weren't using them much, and then it gets pruned off a little bit more. So I really had to learn to come with compassion in that window. And I know parents have often thought, oh, they're just doing that. No, actually, that genuinely got pruned off. So not only, they would turn up some days and go, oh, there's a test today. Like, and I've reminded them 4 or 5 times during the week and written it in their homework diary. There were times they just simply had no idea what you were talking about in the class about a text that we were reading because they weren't focused in that moment. And there was, those sorts of challenges can get really tricky. And a number of our boys suddenly start thinking, well, I must be dumb. And sometimes that brings on disengagement from year 6 right through to sometimes they don't choose to take an academic pathway that's a bit harder than normal because of what happens with this particular window of brain pruning. Now, the other thing, for our girls, it's very different. Their brain pruning it often focuses on the compare despair aspect of being a girl because they're wired in that puberty window to start looking for a mate who's going to be able to kill saber-toothed tigers. And so this big competition about how our appearance is and our body dissatisfaction, which is really normal and was normal before we had Instagram and everything else, that becomes such a big part of the way that girls think and see themselves, which is why many of them are being harmed with the algorithms of today. So theirs is slightly different. And the other one about boys and their brains is it accidentally can prune off their capacity to speak articulately.
Right.
And, I taught so many that 2 of mine that happened to, but 2 it didn't.
Yeah.
It's the grunting and it's the not many words and it's just, right? So often our girls and our boys on this journey, especially till over 16 to 18, are drowning in many layers of hidden stress because of all the changes. So it's not just the brain changes, but ultimately that is a big part of it. And then there's this window of sensitivity, which is a window of possible potential. And it's the same window when their negative critic is drowning them. They think they're dumb or everything's, in that window in middle school, what we call in Australia. So what happens then is that the same time they're feeling like that, the brain is growing all these extra dendrites, because if we were in a traditional kinship community way back in the past, the boys would be off learning how to kill because that's what guys did, and the girls would be learning how to do a million other things to keep everyone else alive. So they can learn super fast if they throw energy and focus into it. So that's why you can pick up a language, when you're 13, 14 or 15, musical instruments. If you're into dance or into sport and you throw energy into it, you improve really rapidly. Or if you have a really exciting teacher who excites the absolute out of you about physics, or as I did with quite a few students, excited them about English, it can change the direction of where they go. Now, that sounds exciting, doesn't it? Except all those extra dendrites are incredibly problematic if we go in the other direction. And take up vaping, drinking alcohol, watching porn, gaming, or endless scrolling on social media. So you can see how there's a gift that can come, but in today's world, those algorithms set up by big tech to make sure they stay engaged is actually causing quite a bit of harm to many of our kids.
They really are. And understanding this, it's so powerful. I'll never forget interestingly, you posted something the other day about Parent Line in Victoria, and I remember ringing Parent Line one day because our son had gone, I'd tried to keep him away from the oven, but he kept approaching the oven, and I'd done all of the things that I thought I could, as well as sort of guarding it. But I knew if I wasn't near the oven, he would go back, and the Parent Line counsellor explained to me he actually can't make that kind of connection between that's hot, I'm going to burn my hand, or I have even burnt my hand, I should not go back and do that again. And it took away the frustration that I was feeling, because I understood he doesn't have the brain development yet to be able to, do what I'm expecting to keep him safe. And so thank you for taking.
And then there's that other layer. Of course, they're meant to take more risks because they have to take a risk, especially with emerging sexuality.
Yes.
They're going to have feelings for people they've never been attracted quite as, and sexually they awaken, which is what no parent ever wants. Yeah. And of course, that is another challenging space. Am I attracted to them, or I'm attracted to that? What's that make me feel like, and what do I do in that space? So that's another really big one. But for boys, they are wired to be those warriors. And so what happens is there's surges of testosterone, and also the turning off of GABA, which is the gamma-aminic butyric acid, which is an impulse inhibiting neurochemical. It gets turned off. So all of a sudden, they will do even crazier, more risky things than ever before. And often it's driven to appeal to the other boys so that they're cool, or that, I'll make you laugh, or you'll think, wow, he's brave. So all of those things are actually happening underneath. They're biological drives. And it doesn't matter how intelligent a boy will be, or how wonderful the family is. There's still all these urges underneath that are driven by biology that we really need to come to understand. And that's, a part of my counselling was working with moments after these sorts of things happen, because I can decode boy behaviour quite a lot. They go, I have no idea why I did it. It was stupid.
Yes.
And I'm not going to do it again. And yet they do. Yeah. And so that was part of the reason why I wanted to write Help Me Help My Teen, because I wanted them to recognise we have to turn up with more compassion for this particular generation. I believe it's harder to be a teen today than ever before. And that, these other extra harms that are landing in their plate. And also the digital world has kind of got them more connected online, but not in real time. So many of them have got delayed social skills. Apparently, instead of having, FOMO, the fear of missing out, we have JOMO now, which is the joy of missing out, where many of them are reluctant to go and connect with their friends. And apparently there are some new AI apps that help you make an excuse without upsetting your friends. So we've lost a lot of the things that built genuine friendships. Play has changed, pressures at school have changed, the digital world turned up, the smartphone turned up. So we have got, and that's, the Mission Australia figures are showing us yet again, the stress around school and heightened anxiety and fear is all really problematic for many of them. And we know we also have an epidemic not only of anxiety with our teens, but also of loneliness. Yeah. So when you put all these together and you have a child transforming into an adult, there is so much going on. And they're really wired, once again, to be hard on themselves, and their self-worth and self-esteem is a wobbly thing at the best of times. But then disappointing parents and letting parents down. And so the fractures that can happen in the parent-child relationship is often driven by the parent's perception from their teenage years.
Yes.
And that you have to come down and you've got to punish them. And if you don't punish them, then they'll keep doing it, which in actual fact causes even more harm. Yeah. And so it's a very big paradigm shift, Jodi, to come to turning up with more compassion and also helping navigate them rather than fix things for them, and getting them the best information so possibly you collaborate together to work through all of the big challenges that I explored in that book. And And so that's kind of the direction we're going. It's a big shift, and many parents are really still stuck in, behaviorism. But it comes at a really big risk because I believe that this generation is more fragile and less resilient than previous generations.
I was on the phone with Mum recently, and I was complaining about sort of an ongoing repetitive challenge in our home that's not a big deal, and I don't sweat the small stuff. But Mum said, "Well, I don't ever see I'm not using their gender, and getting any consequences." And I we finished that conversation, and we do come to parenting with what's in our kind of backpack from our experiences growing up, which comes from our own parents' experiences, and things have changed. And to be a good parent, like I love parental as anything and the good enough dad. And I'll never forget when I was having intrusive thoughts as a mum with postnatal anxiety and obsessive thinking, that I read a book called Good Mums Have Bad Thoughts Too. And this idea of being a good enough parent, we don't have to be perfect. There's a lot to know. There's a lot to learn. There's day-to-day things change. But can you speak to the idea of what is a good parent? Because we can turn to our social media and be told all the amazing things we can be doing. But you know what? Day to day, there are some fundamentals that we can think about to be a good parent. And if you're listening to this, you're probably already across it.
Yes.
What would you say to a parent who's like, gosh, this is a time of change. I understand more already about my team. Yeah. What can I do differently?
Oh, look, I think that the other thing is I think we need to prepare our tweens for the journey. I think they need to know about the brain changes. I think they need to know that there's going to be, heightened moods and things. And we know, the limbic brain grows in this window as well, which means feelings get bigger. And we often see that as, disrespect, or that's just not who I want you to be, right? I need to do something about this. But what I keep on saying to parents is your biggest challenge is that when your teen comes home and their glitter jar is all shook up, right? I guarantee that most of them will not let anything out at school. But when they get home, sometimes that's when it comes out. And of course, we can often be triggered by that because maybe we weren't able to say those things when we were that age, or we got into trouble for it. And so what we really know now is that to help that nervous system calm down, sometimes being able to vent or use those words or express frustration to the safest adult that they know is actually a healthy thing, not a bad thing. And so that's not a bad kid or a lousy kid. It's a kid who's been struggling to cope outside of home, and having a safe base is really it. And so obviously I had 4 sons and 2 fiery roosters, and they argued with me so much about why I was the worst mother on earth, not letting them go to parties. And but instead of me, firing up, and I think that was something I learnt, not just in my classrooms, was I just knew that was actually quite a healthy thing. And so instead of that, and I speak about this in some of my teen workshops and seminars for parents, that I worked out I need to stay calm. Just like the toddler, I thought I'd work that out. Okay, so if I can stay calm, right, and let them, get the snack they need and go stomping off to their bedroom and possibly slam the door on me, that if I gave them 20 minutes for their glitter to settle, and I went up and knocked at their door, and of course anyone who's got boys, please pause outside for about 20 seconds, and then I open the door and I pop in a cup of Milo and a homemade Bicky, and I shove the dog in, and then I shut the door. Because in my mind, I know I wish he wouldn't speak to me like that at that moment, but what I really need him to know is I can still love him. I still have his back. And because what happens, it's really hard to be awful to someone who's been kind to you. And so often, like half an hour to an hour later, they come back up and, mumble an apology or bump you or do something like that. And it's exactly the same with girls. When we turn up with kindness, and our girls are can be particularly nasty because they plan and think about what they're going to say. They're, way more clever at being mean than our boys are. So I think it's the same thing, that they're still just trying to vent what's going on, and the feelings are bigger. And I think that's really where we get worried when when does it shift or change? And you'll find the peak tends to be, up to 15 to 16. However, if it's not a safe home or there's not a sense of a safe growing up and they don't have a safe lighthouse somewhere outside of home, then that is likely to continue because we all know it's the same with everything in, child development. Without a safe, loving human, we're all in a state of distress and threat.
Yeah.
So therefore, we're more likely to, again, what I call hit the tipping point and lose our schmick because we still don't feel safe enough. And it's a huge part of my work around teachers as well, is the safer we make our classrooms, the better they learn, the better they are in the way they behave, and the more energy they will have to make better choices. Not guaranteed, but
yes.
So I think we have to recognise that there's, can we be the bigger person?
Yeah.
In those moments? And then, we'll probably follow on with that in a moment, is how we approach our conversations with our teens, because, when we were up to 10 or 11 or whatever, they were quite willing to listen to our lectures of goodness and how you behave as a person and what you should do. But the push towards autonomy, which is a biological drive, starts pushing them away from us, and they start seeing things through a different lens. And it's okay for them to disagree with us and not agree with us. But as soon as we turn up with that physiology of our body that looks like I've got something serious to say,
yes,
and our tone of our voice, and then we come out with, I'm really not happy about this, whatever, we've already put them into another state that they're not going to listen to us. So that's the challenge, is that the way we turn up to communicate, they actually really are keen to communicate with us when we turn up with the 3 C's that I have. The first one is calmness, so go and walk till you're calm. Secondly, turn up with curiosity. And, that's the biggie. How do you sound like a curious person, not just a parent, but a curious person? And then we're going to have compassion for that. And that's why so often, we can, when they're in an agitated state or a distressed, dysregulated state, we'll say, well, what were you thinking? Or what were you trying to do? And you can't answer that question because you're in the back of your brain and you can't access this part. But when we come in with a curious voice that says, oh, gee, I've just noticed, I read an article in the paper about vaping in schools. Is that happening at your school? So I'm coming in with a curious voice, and they look at you a bit suspicious because if you haven't done it before, then they're thinking, you've probably been to one of my seminars. And they might say, oh, yeah, I think a bit of it. And I didn't realise that the amount of nicotine in vapes changes and that they're targeting kids. Before you know it, your teen will come on board with you and saying, yeah, it's really sick that they make them out for things like young kids to get them, and that you can get them at delis and then you're tapping into, there is a wise place inside our teens. Doesn't matter what you want to call it. And that when they're calm and they're respected and you give them a chance to think, they can often tap into that place. And that was really kind of what my work was around teens, was I want you to go into a really relaxed state and go in and listen to your body. Does that feel like a choice that feels good for you? And I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but they do have that early warning system that will say, no, that feels uncomfortable. No, that actually feels okay. Especially when they want to drop a subject or, they suddenly don't want to do something they love and you're going, what the heck's going on there? No, I've paid the fees, you keep doing it. But if we get underneath what's underneath it with our curiosity, then they don't feel as stressed responding to us. And it's like I don't know if you've watched The Role of a Lifetime on ABC, that's still on iView. The idea of it setting up a sitcom in many situations is a great way for you to sit with your tween and your teen and go, wow, look at that. That happens in our house, right? And then what happens afterwards is not only do they talk to an expert about the concern, they then go and listen to a group of older teens talking about how their parents navigated certain things. So they get a bit of perspective from a grown up but still in touch with them. And then there's an old duck sitting in a chair. But what I loved about it was every now and then the tween, the 11-year-old boy, who's the son, actually had worked out something that the mum and the nan had missed about someone fake online. So what it says is sometimes our kids actually have more digital awareness than we do and can help us stay safe online. So it's not about us being the font of all knowledge anymore. So that beautiful space that says, can you help me check my settings on my Instagram account? Can you see how that also empowers them to feel, oh, gosh, mum and dad, they really don't understand it. That's a beautiful place to get to because that's where they've learnt everything. And even though some of it isn't what we want them to learn, especially around pornography and some of the manosphere stuff and some of the stuff towards, being thin and incredibly whatever you do with your face nowadays online, we know that there's some stuff they've learnt from their friends' experiences or older siblings' experiences or the digital educator that they've had. And that's when we come in and be that curious, let me come alongside you, not above you.
Yeah.
And that can make all the difference. Can it make home feel safer? And I've had many parents who've said, look, we just have more interesting conversations now because I've changed the way I talk to them.
Yeah.
I come in with these little, there's scripts in the book, but I just come in now and I look confused. So I look like I'm the one that needs help. And of course, if they can help and if they can't, it's amazing how quickly they can find some information.
Yeah, it's true. And I love, that's one of the things I love about your book, which is that you've surveyed teens as well. And, a classic thing that a teen will say is you just don't get it. And I put myself in my shoes as a teen and I didn't think my parents knew a thing.
I was not going to write a book, and it's the same with my boys' book and From Boys to Men. I always survey because I want to be able to give their voice.
Yeah.
Even though, I'm pretty passionate about that and I really respect everything, I want to make sure my finger's on the pulse. And what was really beautiful is one of the early, no joke, we had responses from all over the world, which, Jodi, just blew me away. I just thought I'd get Australian, New Zealand, maybe some Canadian ones and some English ones. I got some from Ukraine, Afghanistan, Korea, and they wanted to be heard as well. And that's a key message for us when we're raising teens. Can they feel seen and heard? Can you accept that they can see and hear things that are different to you?
Yeah.
And when you accept them, can you value them and love them?
Yes.
And that was why, and it was a beautiful message in you could tell it was a boy because he said, I just want to say thank you for asking us instead of writing a book about us when you actually aren't us.
Yeah.
And I felt, they felt really validated. So many of those messages were incredibly heartfelt and deep about the struggles they're feeling today. I ended up in tears with some of those, but we put some of those voices in because, that's what we do as counsellors and therapists and school, youth workers. We don't have enough. And that's why I wanted to shift the focus of parents to realise there's so much more you can do by changing the way that you address and communicate with them.
We can. And even when it comes to anxiety, there are so many brilliant programs just for parents. It's not even involving the child because the way that we understand anxiety, the way that we respond, the way that we role model and accommodate and various other things can be so powerful. And I was thinking before that we all want the rule book, the guidebook when we're parents, and you've written so many. But with a 15 and a 17-year-old at the moment myself, reading "Help Me Help My Teen," it just I remember reading about the pruning and understanding about brain development, having that conversation with my son a number of years ago, but I haven't had that conversation with my daughter because we've had other things that we've been, other different challenges. But just when we're equipped, we're empowered, we understand, then we're not so reactive. We can approach it, like you said, with calm and with compassion and with curiosity. Something that you said before I want to come back to, because reading this book and knowing your work, something that I've thought about a lot. You use the word lighthouse, and it's a brilliant metaphor. And for those parents listening or even educators listening who might be that very lighthouse, can you explain who a lighthouse is for a young person and what kind of important role that they play?
Yeah, look, it was something I learnt, again, in all those years of teaching. So when a teen is really struggling with that relationship with their parent, and remember, they're meant to push back.
Yeah.
They're meant to be drawn to their friends for all their advice and stuff. And so it doesn't mean magic, it's not about us being a less than good parent.
Yeah.
They want more privacy. And unless we step back a little, they can feel threatened in that space as well. And it is tricky. So it was like a lighthouse figure is a significant adult ally. And so when we lived in closer proximity, we always had extended family, aunts and uncles and grandparents. And the grandparents featured quite highly in the survey of lighthouse figures. But it's all those exceptional teachers and amazing coaches. They're not always amazing, but every now and then there's one that takes, a teen aside and has a quiet chat, and pats them on the back and gives them a bit of hope. And sometimes it's just a conversation. It's just knowing their name. It's this, there is levels of how we be that lighthouse. And so the messages over the years that I've had from that space is sometimes I didn't even teach a kid that I had a conversation with that completely changed their perspective of who they were. Because I want to touch on, there's our suicide rate in Australia is just appallingly high, number one killer of 14 to 25-year-olds. And when I've worked with teens contemplating leaving the world, there were three things, Jodi, that they would say to me. And one was, no one cares.
Yeah.
Right? And often it's not true. I know the parents of the kid who says no one cares.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a really key aspect. They've beaten themselves up and convinced themselves that no one cares. So that's why lighthouse figures can be that one thing. Has face lights up, check in, see how they're doing. The second one is I don't matter. In other words, if I haven't got the top grades or I haven't got whatever, even those kids sometimes say I just don't matter. And that's a classic thing in this transition stage. And then the third one is often things aren't going to get any better. Yeah. So why this whole, journey can be so fraught is because they're trying to work out who they are. And, they put on masks at school and in different places. But I can remember being really moody and confused. And I didn't even have a TV or magazines to confuse me. So it's a natural kind of confusing time. Yeah. And that's why I was moody, because I just get into those ruminating loops of negativity, which, you talk about a lot without any tools. But where did I escape? Into books.
Yeah.
And so as a busy, woman today, there are times when, I'm on the road and I'm doing seminars and stuff. What I'm doing in between, my team has to look after the business because I've dived into a book.
Yes.
So I learned a strategy, and I particularly like crime because it's so remote from all my parenting and, and it is still, and, I would do that instead of watching a show on TV. So it's an interesting thing. So we can learn these things. And that's why when I noticed that my kids were getting more stressed in my classrooms way back, I started bringing, it was before mindfulness was a thing. It was before there was any science around it. I would let them have brain breaks and rest their brains. I would play music that was calming. I would do short visualizations, and I was this weird teacher.
Ahead of your time.
So interesting. I know, right? And every now and then I'll run into someone who is seriously, old, over 50, who told me that's where they learnt how to calm themselves down. It is those, I go off to my favourite beach, and you've got one of those tracks on your website. Yeah. And the other week I was at a Help Me Help My Teen in Perth, and a mum came up to me with this really tall boy who was about 6'4", and he's 19, and she said, Maggie, I want you to meet my son, because he was struggling to be able to fall asleep when he was 3 and 4. He used your sleepy time track, which is a free one on my website. Yeah. And then he navigated to Beach Bliss. And he has used that all through his high school years. He's now at university. And when he's stressed, he goes back into that place. Oh. And I'm looking at this beautiful big hunk of a boy yes. who I've been in his bedroom for nearly 16 years. And we both cried.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It was this beautiful moment of he got a tool that worked for him.
Yeah.
he continued to use. And meeting me was like we have this digital relationship. Honest to God, it made my heart sing. So,
Oh,
as we, the whole conversation, your conversation so often about, so being anxious in adolescence is completely normal because of
yeah,
all those changes,
yeah.
let alone high school with 5 different classes and loads of
Oh,
homework and all of those things, right? So we really have to recognize it's pretty normal. But when is the difference? And that's the one. When do I really worry? And of course, it
yeah,
was one of the first chapters I wanted to write in this book is when is my moody, grumpy teenager? When is it something more than that?
yes,
And I think we have to trust our gut instinct. I think as parents, quite often we just notice a few things starting to happen.
yeah,
But when they start to withdraw, if they've been a pretty social kid, or stop going to play their favourite sport, don't want to hang out. Obviously, the shifts around sleep is massive.
yeah,
Can't sleep or keep on sleeping. And then around food, that can be a big one, not eating as much or comfort eating for whatever. You can notice a jitting, for some, they're just more, their body starts to be something you notice. The way that they talk to you, have they become even more angry and irritable? And especially boys. Boys tend to go to anger, girls often to tears.
yeah,
And so if there's an increase in that, and then you've got a few of these things happening, or that sort of sense of just really, really flat body. You see the body, the shoulders are down.
yeah. The
And so
body
that's
language.
really, we have to have the conversation then that goes, oh, gee, I just noticed you seem to be really a bit down lately. Is there anything I could, and you leave it. So you sow a seed and then you
Yeah,
might come back once again with comfort, with love and go, are you sure? Is there anything else? And of course, there's a really reluctance for them to ever want to see anyone else. So the idea if we can get them to open up with, is it study? Is it friends? Give me a few clues. I'm not going to fix anything. I just want you to know I'm here for you.
yeah,
And that's why sometimes that lighthouse figure, they might feel more comfortable talking to the lighthouse figure. And, that's what's beautiful if you know the lighthouse figure and you can say, can you just check in too? I
yes,
always like to check in, via school with an email to a teacher, just saying, just double checking. Have you noticed any changes? Because they can't just be like that at home and be sparkling at school.
yeah, yeah,
Right. So there's usually a consistency across the board. I've noticed, a shift around, the way they're turning up. And that's when we really collectively come on board and say, okay, let's see what we can do. And in the book, obviously, as I said, there's not enough psychologists and school psychs are still often busy on testing.
yes, yeah,
You've got 1,500 kids in your school, 2 psychologists, and they're only available for counselling at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon is ridiculous. We have Headspace and we have lots of other spaces, and some of those can take ages to get into, which is why I mentioned a couple of online places where you can go and get some support, and some of the Headspace online is good. The Brave program up in Queensland Uni was a great one to do a survey that they can do and you can do. So I think I point them in the direction of things that can help work out if that is something that is going to need professional help, or is this just a particularly dark patch because it's towards the end of year, there are big exams coming, you've got a girl online who's been mean to you, or, your heart's been broken, or you haven't been asked to the formal.
yes,
So what we know is if one or two of the things that would cause you, angst is piled up, of course you're going to be feeling a lot of those things. It might not be a clinical depression.
yeah,
It's just a burdensome layer of big, heavy feelings.
yeah. And one of the passages that I loved in your book, I'm gonna read it out. I actually wrote it on my chalkboard at home. We have a chalkboard in our family room, and I wrote a version of this. But you said, from the moment you read the introduction to this book, if you live with or work with teens, I want you to start reassuring them that no matter how difficult things may seem, no matter how awful it feels to be them, there is nothing too big that cannot be overcome without the support of one good human. And I think that what you've just said, Maggie, you've shared so much with us in the time that we've had together today, and I think you've landed on some really important messages that we can, as parents, the ways that we can approach our parenting, and also the lighthouses, I think, for us all to start thinking, right, who are those people and who are we for the people in our children's lives as well. There are so many more questions parents have, and the book, just to give you a couple, I'm just flicking again back to but just what to do when you discover your teen is intentionally self-harming, what to do when your teen experiences a significant loss experience or a death. What do you need to know about supporting your neurodivergent teen through the challenges of adolescence? This book, it is the guide that we need, and the resources. As a parent, you can go to Maggie's website and access the resources that Maggie has shared in the book, and they're being updated. So as new resources become available, they're being included, and so you can access those today, just straight after listening to this, if you want to dive further in. But I encourage everybody to grab your copy of Help Me Help My Teen. Maggie, your time is so precious, and thank you for sharing some of it with us here today. I just want to thank you for the work that you've done, the 10 incredible major books that you've written, and you're still travelling and speaking. So, I just want to say a huge thank you on behalf of every parent I know who has just leaned on you and your wisdom over so many years, and will continue to as well.
Oh, Jodi, that's lovely. And it was so interesting that I ended up going right back to where I started. Back to teens, and and it's so funny because I now have tweens as grandchildren. Yes. So I'm really chuffed because that's where I love, right? And the parents are all ready to pull their hair out. I'm going, no, I love them when they're like that. So, and I want to leave with one last thought, and that is this message that if you can keep mentioning to your tweens and teens, even your younger children, so that by the time they're a teenager, they'll know it, and that is that we are capable of loving you no matter what. So there's nothing you can ever do that will ever stop us. And that's the first thing. If anything really bad happens to you or any of your friends, your first thought needs to be call mum, call dad. Yeah. And no matter what. So every now and then, just no matter what, put it in a note in the lunchbox, on the door, on the mirror. They've got to know that your love is bigger than that. And that's the biggest protective factor you can give your beautiful teen as they navigate the bumpiest ride on earth that we've all had to do.
Oh my goodness, yes. And that is a beautiful place to finish. Maggie Dent, thank you very much once again for your time today. It's just been a joy talking with you.
Thank you, Jodi. My pleasure.
Thank you for sharing this time with me on Well, Hello Anxiety. Remember, understanding anxiety is the first step to managing it. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take things one moment at a time. Focus on what you can control and know that you are not alone on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and I'll meet you right back here next week.